What's happening, everybody? In today's show, I've heard of running back by committee, but Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss, they're trying to go running back by assembly. Locked on SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. On today's show, we got the latest in the transfer portal, a couple of stories you don't want to hear in the offseason when you're an SEC football team, and some SEC baseball and softball roundup. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs is going to help you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Go post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. All right, we got plenty to jump into, so let's dive right into it. Let's start with the transfer portal, as Ole Miss made a couple of additions to their top-ranked transfer class over the weekend. And we start first with former Miami of Ohio running back Rashad Amos, 6'2", 235 pounds, spent 3 seasons at South Carolina. To begin his career, transferred to Miami of Ohio this past season and had a 1,000-yard rushing performance, 1,075 yards, 13 touchdowns before he jumped back into the transfer portal around Christmas. He originally had committed to Mississippi State mid-April. We talked about that right here. But he flipped that pledge to Colorado a few weeks later. Now, after taking a visit to Oxford, he has picked Ole Miss. So maybe nothing set in stone here, but goodness gracious, he will have 2 seasons of eligibility remaining with the Rebels. He was not used very much in South Carolina in his 3 seasons there, but the move to Ohio, Miami of Ohio last season, set up for a breakout year. He had 4 100-yard games for the Red Hawks last year, had a 163-yard day in their win over Ohio. And in the Cure Bowl against App State, he had a career best 180 yards on 33 attempts. So pretty good running back. According to Pro Football Focus, he averaged 3.7 yards after contact and forced 49 missed tackles. That was among one of the best in the MAC last year. So a good pickup there in Rashad Amos. And then we find out former Georgia State and Clemson running back Domonique Thomas committed to Ole Miss. He spent 2 seasons at Clemson, initially committed to Georgia State in the transfer portal this past December, but he reopened his commitment a couple weeks ago, and now he is heading to Oxford. He played high school football in Ohatchee High School in Alabama. He was an unranked prospect back in 2020. So Ole Miss has brought in over 20 kids now in the transfer portal, and Amos and Thomas will be joining a crowded backfield at Ole Miss, which has now added 4 transfer running backs this offseason. Or 5, really, if you count. Let's run through them. Miami, Florida transfer Henry Parrish Jr., who, of course, was a former Ole Miss Rebel himself. New Mexico transfer Jacory Croskey-Merritt, who we talked about a few weeks ago, who's been very productive. He also committed to the Rebels during the spring window. And you had former LSU tailback Logan Diggs, who joined in the winter. Now, Diggs had offseason knee surgery, and they don't know when he's going to be ready to go. And, reports say it'll be later, if anything. Ole Miss also brings back Ulysses Bentley, who had 95 carries for over 500 yards and 4 touchdowns last season. And he had previously been very productive at SMU. So, look, they lose Quinshon Judkins to the transfer portal, who heads to Ohio State. But in trying to replace Judkins, I mean, my goodness, I joked, said, I've heard of going running back by committee, but, I mean, this is running back by assembly. Rashad Amos from Miami of Ohio, Domonique Thomas from Georgia State, Henry Parrish from Miami of Florida, Jacory Croskey-Merritt of New Mexico, and Logan Diggs of LSU to go with Ulysses Bentley, formerly of SMU. I mean, at some point, Ole Miss has got to start, building a backfield with like kids they recruited and become 3-4 year players, and they stay in Oxford. It just seems It seems crazy. And look, I'm not disparaging Ole Miss. I mean, they could maybe get the best out of these kids and maybe the best man win, right? I mean, running back by committee, Lane's gone two-headed, three-headed running attacks in years past. So we'll see what it looks like there in Oxford. But Lane Kiffin using any and every resource to replace the production of Quinshon Judkins. We'll see who emerges from that group there for Ole Miss. And we'll see if these kids who have committed, I mean, gosh, like just the epitome of where we are right now in college football. When I'm talking about a kid who has literally changed his mind 3 times in one offseason, like, bro, pick a school. Let's pick a school and be done with it. Like, what's the deal? Goodness gracious. All right, other news over at Florida. They've been in a roster crunch as they hit their limit of 85 scholarships a little over a week ago when they added O-lineman Jason Zandamela. They also then went to add former 5-star prospect Cormani McClain, transferring in from Colorado, and the report said he would have to be added as a walk-on player because of scholarship limits, but they do have the usage of NIL, so they can take care of kids that way. Well, on Friday, another kid going to be added to the roster. Former Arizona State wide receiver Elijhah Badger committed to the Gators. He has 4 years of experience, was one of the better receivers available in the portal. And with that, Billy Napier and the Gators utilizing the portal this offseason. They brought in former Wisconsin wide receiver Chimere DK, who had experience playing with Graham Mertz. And now they add this guy from Arizona State, Elijhah Badger, through the portal. He has over 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns across the last 2 seasons. Had a career high 866 yards in 2022. Was also a kick returner for Arizona State last year. And they will look to those guys, including Trey Wilson on the roster, obviously, to replace the production of Ricky Pearsall there at Florida. Over at Auburn, Hugh Freeze and the Tigers, they added a safety a few days ago in the portal from Antoine Fagans Jr. from Arkansas State and Northwestern State. 2022-2023 at Northwestern State, he appeared in 6 games, 5 of which came last fall. So adding another body to the defensive backfield there for Auburn. And over at Georgia, the Bulldogs took a hit to their running back room, losing Andrew Paul. And he announced on Friday he is transferring to Jacksonville State. 6 foot tall, redshirt sophomore, 3 years of eligibility remaining. His decision came because Georgia's got 6 scholarship running backs on the roster. And junior Trevor Etienne coming over from Florida, redshirt sophomore Branson Robinson, redshirt freshman Roderick Robinson, and then the true freshmen Chauncey Bowens, Nate Frazier, and Dwight Phillips Jr. Now, Andrew Paul did play in 7 games as a redshirt freshman, was coming off a G-Day game, which he had 4 carries for 44 yards. And he bounced back from an ACL tear in his true freshman season to contribute as a reserve in 2023. So we'll keep an eye on what he does over there at Jacksonville State. But like I said, Georgia already with a loaded running back room, so not too much concern there in losing him. But man, it's just going to be fascinating to see who wins that starting job over there at Ole Miss, because it's a Lane Kiffin offense. They're going to run the football a lot. They're going to score a ton of points. They're going to move the ball a lot. And you got Jackson Dart. You got all these weapons at wide receiver and tight end. The offensive line looks good. You just need to figure out who's going to be that back. And, we were thinking maybe it would be a feature back. It's probably not going to be a feature back. It's probably just going to be full running back by committee and 2-3 guys hopefully emerge from that group. But again, give Lane Kiffin credit. They are addressing it and saying, let's try to add as many pieces to this running back room as possible to try to replace the production of Quinshon Judkins. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we got to touch on 2 not so pretty stories you hope to avoid of the offseason when you're in the offseason around the SEC. More Locked On SEC coming your way here in just a second. But first, I want to remind you guys this episode is presented to you by our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. Look, when you are hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. And that's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has all the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn just isn't just another job board. They're going to help you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else. Even those who aren't actively searching for a job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. At LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours of posting. Hire professionals like a professional. Use LinkedIn. 2.5 million small businesses are already using LinkedIn for hiring. Go post your job for free right now. It's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Go post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, rolling along here, Locked On SEC. Hey, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? And you got to turn down the sound because of all the shouting? Make the switch over to Locked On Sports today. Free 24/7 sports streaming channel without all the yelling with can't miss analysis. Check them out on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. That is Locked On Sports today. All right, now to get to some news that's not so fun. And we'll start over at Georgia, as they had another driving-related arrest as freshman wide receiver Sacovie White was arrested on Saturday morning. 2 misdemeanor charges of reckless driving and driving down a one-way road. That's according to the Athens-Clarke County jail log. Now, White was booked on the 2 charges at 3:04 a.m. He was released on bond at 4 a.m. He had signed with Georgia as a member of their 2024 recruiting class out of Cartersville, Georgia. Caught 2 passes for 29 yards for a touchdown in Georgia's spring game. You know, we talked about him right here. Very impressive. Young guy in the G-Day game. Looked really good. But this is the second driving-related arrest of the year for Georgia. Keep in mind it's May. Transfer running back Trevor Etienne was arrested in March on 4 driving-related charges. He's the transfer from Florida. Kirby Smart said at the time after Etienne's arrest, "I can only speak for my university, but I think we do it better than anybody in the country in terms of education, speakers. With NIL, we've done studies and looked, we have more kids with vehicles now than we probably ever have. I can't really say to the style of vehicles, but you could probably make an easy assumption that with more money, they have an opportunity to have nicer cars. But just the number of players with vehicles is higher, and that's not any excuse for the ability to speed. It just means we have more opportunities to have traffic citations, etc., which we don't want." Smart never officially told us what the punishment was going to be for Trevor Etienne, something they'll handle in-house. But this all comes on the heels of 2023, where Georgia had 5 people connected with the program arrested on driving-related charges. And, of course, Georgia offensive lineman Devin Willock and staffer Chandler LaCroix tragically lost their lives in an automobile accident in January 2023. Of course, neither White nor Etienne were with the program then, but it becomes a punchline, and not in a good way, when other programs around the country look at Georgia and go, "What's the deal here?" And look, it's not to say every program is clean and does things, it has clean off seasons. It doesn't have kids arrested for things. And even some of these have been kind of tame, right? I mean, speeding or whatever. But it's just, when it keeps happening, you keep looking at the man at top and going, "Kirby, why does this keep happening with players? Like, call Uber, call Lyft, and let's get a damn, NIL deal done for every player on the team. Get everybody a $200 Uber credit and call it a day." I get it. At the end of the day, 18, 19, 20-year-olds aren't going to make the best decisions all the time. But go back to that quote about it. Everybody has cars. That's great. But just because you have the Maserati or the Lamborghini doesn't mean you got to go 80 in a 40, right? I don't know. I don't know what the answer here is, but obviously Kirby Smart, like, come on, man. Like, you run a top-notch program. How do you keep having kids getting arrested for driving-related incidents? Bring in the police chief of Athens. Bring in some local police. Hey, guys, here's what we're looking for. Don't do this. I get it. Sometimes maybe alcohol's involved. It's college. People are going to do things and make dumb decisions, but it just seems like this just keeps happening at the University of Georgia. And again, you're going to have fingers pointed at you from the rest of the SEC and the rest of the country, pointing and laughing on, how does this keep happening at Georgia? And again, not to make light of January 2023, where two of your members of your program tragically killed in a, heinous accident. So anyway, just really hoping that this kind of starts to clean up at Georgia and we don't hear about any more issues. But it's going to be magnified too. I mean, look, even if a kid gets pulled over for going 60 in a 40, like it's going to make headlines because it just seems to keep happening there at Georgia. Again, these are the storylines you don't want to be talking about in the offseason, but we'll see what happens. Sacovie White, probably, again, same thing like Trevor Etienne, in-house punishment, go run laps or something, and you'll learn your lesson. All right, an even worse offseason story. This news coming out over the weekend that Auburn running back Brian Battie reportedly injured in a shooting in Florida on Saturday, in an incident that also claimed the life of his older brother. The Sarasota Herald-Tribune reporting that Brian Battie remains in critical condition after being shot in the head. Shooting reportedly took place outside a hookah bar in Sarasota, Florida, early Saturday morning. An Auburn spokesperson telling multiple outlets that the program is aware of the situation and still gathering information regarding it. Sarasota Director of Community Affairs Evan Keats confirmed to AL.com that Tommy, Brian's older brother, was killed in the shooting while 4 others were taken to the hospital. Keats would not confirm any other victims' names in the shooting, but deputies have not released the name of the shooter or a motive. Investigation is ongoing, but Brian Battie, a senior from Sarasota, began his career at South Florida before he transferred to Auburn back in 2023. Rushed the ball 51 times, 227 yards for the Tigers in his debut season, backing up Jarquez Hunter and Damari Alston. And at USF, he was a 1,000-yard rusher in 2022. Was a great kick returner, was a consensus first-team All-American kick returner after he led college football with 3 kickoff returns for touchdowns. And but he was Auburn's primary kick returner last season, averaging 23 yards per return. Now, an updated report Sunday afternoon, Brian Schultz reporting that, according to his sources, Brian Battie was still in ICU. Reports were he could move his hands, but doctors unable to figure out, how much damage done to his brain and that sort of stuff. Again, don't want to speculate. So, if you guys want to learn more information, I'm sure you can find it out there, and we'll probably have more information as the week goes along. But just absolutely tragic situation. You don't like to hear that kind of news. Especially a kid's life in jeopardy, just absolutely heinous. And again, football becomes an afterthought when things like this happen, but just brutal storyline there. We wish him the best. Thoughts and prayers to his family. And, here's hoping for the best. Again, football aside, here's hoping for the best for Brian Battie over there at Auburn. All right, if we could transition over to just a couple of recruiting nuggets. Over at LSU, they lost a big part of their 2025 recruiting class on Friday. 5-star wide receiver Dakorien Moore committed to the Tigers back last August. He is decommitted. It was kind of pointing this way. He's from Duncanville, Texas. Some reports that a lot of members of his family have connections to the University of Texas, and a lot of people projecting he is going to flip to Steve Sarkisian and Texas. Now, the good news for the bad news for LSU is it's a loss because he's the number 3 overall player and the number 1 wide receiver. The good news is LSU's never had a problem recruiting and finding wide receivers, right? I mean, the state of Louisiana produces them at will. They just had 2 first-rounders in this year's NFL draft, and Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. So we'll see. Brian Kelly will have to pivot, but the big one, he's got to hang on to that number 1 quarterback, Bryce Underwood, that he has committed for the class of 2025. Also has a top running back in Harlem Berry committed as well. And then over at Alabama, they are getting off to a hot start on the recruiting for the class of 2026. So this is not 2025. This is next year. But Kalen DeBoer on Sunday picking up a verbal pledge from Dorian Barney, blue chip cornerback from the state of Georgia, out of Peachtree Ridge. He's 6'1", 170 pounds, rated a 4-star, the number 4 corner, and the number 9 player from the state of Georgia, rated the number 44 prospect in the class of 2026. So plenty of time to go before we get there, but Kalen DeBoer already making a little bit of a splash for the class of 2026, which, again, like, it's crazy to think we're already talking about the recruiting class for 2025. 2026 will be here before we know it. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Still more to come as we'll switch gears and bring you some updates on the baseball and softball field right here on Locked On SEC. First, I want to remind you this episode presented by our friends over at FanDuel. It is winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Go visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get in on the action. And we've been telling you guys, they just recently released some week 1 college football odds. If you want to go get in on some spreads or over-under bets, all that kind of stuff is up there for you under the Sportsbook tab over at FanDuel. But first things first, you got to get signed up and get your account taken care of if you've never signed up before. Again, FanDuel.com/lockedon. Get signed up there. FanDuel, they are America's #1 sportsbook. Go check them out. Get started today. Download the app, and you can check out all the action every single day. And like we said, get in on the NBA, the MLB action, all going on right now, and then look ahead to the college football futures, and college football season will be here before we know it. One more time, it's FanDuel.com/lockedon. All right, continue on here. Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. All right, we got to switch gears here and give some shout outs to the baseball field in the SEC. I was out on the road catching some baseball action this past weekend. Was not over in Knoxville, but shout out to the Tennessee Volunteers as they dominated the spring sports, winning a historic trio of titles. Back in March, Dalton Connect scored 26 points, and the 4th-ranked Vols beat number 17 South Carolina to clinch the outright SEC regular season championship on the men's basketball side of things. Then on May 3rd, Tennessee softball team pulled away from Kentucky for an 8-3 win to clinch a second consecutive regular season title on the softball diamond. And then on Saturday, the Tennessee baseball side swept South Carolina to win a share of the regular season baseball crown with Kentucky. I think we had already mentioned Kentucky had wrapped up, they had claimed the share of the SEC title, but on Saturday they lost to Vandy and Tennessee won. So they finished tied. But the Vols become the first team in SEC history to win men's basketball, baseball, and softball regular season championships in the same year. So pretty cool there that they take the crown in all three. But looking like a nice year there for Danny White and Tennessee. I mean, football won 9 games and the Citrus Bowl. Won 3 spring conference titles. Their men's golf team advanced to the NCAA tournament this past week. Women's tennis advanced to the Final Four. So pretty cool stuff there. We'll see, can Josh Heupel take things to the next level this year? Maybe get Tennessee to double-digit wins, get to a playoff. Nico Iamaleava, can he be in the Heisman race? A lot of stuff to get in on, but FanDuel currently has the Vols at plus 1,100 to win the SEC this coming year in football if you want to get in on that. All right, the SEC baseball tournament bracket and schedule has been announced, and here's what we're looking at ahead for this week. If you guys are looking to enjoy some SEC baseball over there in Hoover on Tuesday, we got 4 games happening. LSU and Georgia will get things started early at 9:30. Then it'll be Alabama, South Carolina in game 2. Then it'll be Vanderbilt and Florida at 4:30, and then Mississippi State, Ole Miss at night, which, look, if you guys remember, every year in the SEC tournament, they deal with weather issues, games running long, extra inning games. These games rarely start at the time that they're slated to, but they do their best. But it's going to be a lot of fun. And then, of course, the winners of all 4 of those games will advance. Kentucky will play the winner of Georgia, LSU. Arkansas will get the winner of Alabama, South Carolina. Tennessee will get the winner of Vanderbilt, Florida, and A&M will get the winner of Mississippi State, Ole Miss. Those will all be on Wednesday. Then on Thursday, we'll have the consolation rounds, the double elimination games early, and so on and so forth. So we'll crown an SEC tournament champion on Sunday at 2. Will be that one. So look out for that. Over on the softball side of things, to give some props. Tennessee advanced. They are going to host Alabama and Knoxville in the Super Regional. So cool. We'll get SEC on SEC there. Mizzou, they advanced out of their regional. They will host Duke in the Supers. Florida advanced. They will host Baylor. Georgia advanced. They will travel to Los Angeles to take on UCLA. LSU advanced. They will take on Stanford. Texas A&M advanced. They will take on number 1 Texas, a good SEC preview for next year. And then all the teams that were eliminated. Florida State eliminated Auburn. Duke eliminated South Carolina. Kentucky was eliminated by Michigan. Villanova eliminated Arkansas. Cal State Fullerton took out Mississippi State. And Princeton eliminated Ole Miss. But shout out to all the SEC teams still playing. I think that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the 13 SEC teams that play softball have advanced and continue on their play. So best of luck to all of them. I'm going to be looking forward to what they could do this weekend. Look, Texas and Oklahoma were the 1 and 2 seeds, and they're still alive and moving on. And we need to see if somebody can knock them off. The question is, they're Big 12 teams, right? This is the last of the Big 12. They're not SEC yet, so we're not rooting for them. We need one of these current SEC teams to win it and bring home that trophy. We've got South Carolina women win a championship there. We, got SEC teams winning titles. We need another trophy for the trophy case, if you will. All right. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Keep coming back and checking us out each and every day. And hey, thanks for making us your first listen. Go make your second listen. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It's also available on the Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. It's called Locked On Sports Today, here for you 24/7, covering all the top sports stories of the day. Go check them out, Locked On Sports Today. Talk to you guys tomorrow.